who was part of this consortium, Dr. Carol Barnes, who lives in Houston, Texas. He is a chemical engineer, and he brought to this conference his background, his chemical background on melanin. And what he has shown is that, for example, when you watch Black athletes on the basketball court and you see brothers make the no-look pass, he said the reason why they're able to do that, the reason why they're able to move with these displaying this remarkable skill is because the melanin in their body acts like an antenna, and it expands throughout their body, connects with other melanated teammates. And so they are communicating on a psychic level. They can make the no-look passes. They can make moves that others can't make because this vessel that we have is a gift from God. Yeah. And when we know how to utilize this vessel, we can amplify all of these gifts. Now, the other side of that, if we don't know the power of melanin, then that works against us. For example, melanin is an alkaloid. And as a result, melanin bonds to other alkaloids that we ingest. For example, heroin, cocaine, marijuana are all alkaloids, which means then when melanated people consume those drugs, we are going to get higher faster, stay and have a more intense high, and have a more difficult time trying to kick those drugs because the alkaline nature of these drugs binds to the alkaline in melanin. And so as a result of these lectures, there was one of the outcomes from these melanin conferences was a brother developed a melanin specific drug test, because what was happening to a lot of brothers and sisters who were going for a job, and then you have to pee in the cup and take a drug test, right? And many African Americans were showing up false positive because the test was reading the alkaline and the melanin in their urine. So it was a white chemist who developed a melanin specific drug test, which would filter out the melanin in the urine so that brothers and sisters would have a fair shot at getting a job. And so, this was a subject matter that African-American scholars brought to the forefront in the 1970s, 1980s. This is the subject matter that Dr. Frances Cress Welsing dedicated her life to. And still, because of the nature of the environment in which we live, they poo-poo all of this and say there's a pseudoscience and that it has no validity. But the time that I spent at the National Science Foundation going through their archives, I can tell you they are studying melanin and have been studying melanin for decades.
Yeah, wow. Brothers and sisters, Anthony Browder gives a talk at the Power Networking Conference, and he also gives a class. It would be worth the price of admission just to come to the class. We're rounding the corner now. We're on spirit. We've covered the mind, we've covered the body. We're now going to cover spirit in step 10. And step 10 says, learn to interpret religious imagery.
Yes. Well, George, you referenced that a little earlier when you talked about the Black Bible. It's important that you see yourself as a reflection of divinity. And we have to understand how the concept of God has been stolen from African people, Europeanized, and then presented to us as our path to salvation. So to know that Africans were the first human beings on the planet to conceive of a concept of God. God is a concept that every culture on this planet has cultivated a relationship with. African people or people of color have always seen God in their image. Only conquered people and enslaved people have been socialized to see God, to see the creator in an image other than themselves.
And the ancient Egyptian pharaoh who conceptualized one God was Akhenaten?
Akhenaten, yes.
Yeah, and I learned that from you, of course.
Okay.
And Akhenaten was the husband of Nefertiti.
Nefertiti, yes.
That's right. And Nefertiti,
And
and they
the
had a
father
child,
of King Tut.
the father of King Tut. That's right. There you go. Right. Incredible. Um, Step 11, learn to honor the memory of your ancestors. This is very, very powerful, very important.
Yes.
And
One of
we
the
don't.
ways, one of the ways that we have been, our growth and development has been stymied by our oppressor is by them making us believe that to acknowledge your ancestors is paganism, is voodoo. There are no people on this planet who have succeeded as a people by separating themselves from their ancestors. Every free people know that you are here because of the sacrifices that have been made by people along your bloodline. And so it is your duty to remember them, to honor them. We're going to do that next month in the United States of America with Mother's Day. We're going to do it the following month with Father's Day. We do it with Memorial Day. We do it with the 4th of July. All of these holidays or holy days were designed specifically to honor ancestors. And people of African ancestry have more ancestors than any other people on the planet. So we've got all of these souls waiting for us to call on them so that they can protect us, inspire us, inspirit us, right? Inhabit us, protect us, and allow us to do the work that needs to be done.
How many thousands of years of ancestors do we actually have? A lot of Black people can't wrap their mind around this.
Okay, so let me share with you information, data that comes from the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History, in which they state, and I'm giving you the revised data. Africans have been living on this planet for at least 300,000 years. 300,000 yeurs. And humanity existed in Africa and Africa alone until about until about 60 BC, when Africans began migrating out of Africa into the East and populating the rest of the world. Now, the other caveat is about 4 years ago, geneticists identified the genes within Europeans that resulted in them losing their melanin. Because originally, if Africans are the first people on the planet, then Europeans are Africans who've lost their melanin, who've lost the phenotype and the hair structure and all of these things. But geneticists identified the genes within Europeans that mutated and became white. And that gene is only 7,000 to 8,000 years old. So if you take this data, what that means is that people of African ancestry have been living on this planet for at least 292,000 years before the Europeans. So why are we letting them call all the shots? Why are we letting them determine what is our reality? And more importantly, why are we allowing them to make us believe in a God concept that is not a reflection of our own selves?
Mm-hmm. The first great civilizations built in Africa, what, 7,000 years before Christ?
At least 7,000.
Things that still stand today.
Yeah, right. And those civilizations, while Egypt is the focal point, Egypt is nothing but the daughter of Ethiopia.
Yes.
Culture began in Ethiopia and migrated northward down the Nile. So Chancellor Williams in his book, The Destruction of Black Civilization, refers to Egypt as Ethiopia's oldest daughter. So we need context in order to really understand our story, our great and mighty walk, as John Henry Clark called it.
That's right. You said something that always gets me when I go to Egypt, that we were floating we were on a Nile cruise and we were going down the Nile.
Yes.
Now this is an entirely different concept than what we know of in America. If you were to look at this on a map, we would actually be going north, right?
Mhm.
So it's really up, south, down, north, right?
Exactly.
I mean, right? So it's very unusual. It's not what you think when you say you're on a cruise going down the Nile. You're not going south, really, in many respects, right?
Right.
Right. And it's and I guess that's because of the topography of the land, correct?
Right. The higher elevation is in the
Right.
south in Ethiopia, which is the
Right.
source of the Blue Nile, and water follows gravity and flows downhill.
That's right.
So
That's
the other reality is going back to the point I made earlier, step 3 regarding the mind. Perception precedes being. You are who you believe you are. The only reason why we say down south and up north is because of a Flemish cartographer who created the Mercator map, the map that we use in every classroom. That was a map designed by a European specifically to favor Europe. So he put Europe at the top of the world and everybody else at the bottom. So when you create your own maps, you create your own reality. So if you
sure.
one of the beautiful things that Asa used to do is to take a map of Africa, or he had a pen of Africa, and he would turn it right side up, and people would come to him and say, "Oh, your map is upside down," and then he would tell them about the difference between up south and down north.
Right. 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 Step 12, we've got 2 more steps. Learn to prepare yourself for war and peace.
Right.
12, and survival strategy.
I referenced in this particular chapter the writings of Sun Tzu, a great Chinese philosopher.
Yes.
And he gives strategies for war, how to prepare yourself for war. And the final step in preparing yourself for war is to not have to fight a war, is to be so perfectly badass that your enemy knows better than to attack you, because he would lose too much. And he then chooses to attack someone who is less prepared for battle. So in preparing for battle, you have to deal with your mind, your body, your soul, and you don't wait until you're on the battlefield to prepare your weapon, right? And again, the best battle is a battle that is not fought. To use your mind and use other resources to preserve yourself, to preserve
Critical thinking. Yeah. Critical thinking. Critical
absolutely.
thinking driven by intellectual curiosity. COVID-19. It says here, and I just had that as a note to myself, step 13, learn how to live in a new America.
Absolutely.
Unpack that.
Well, the world has changed. And just like 9/11, we are never going back to that old world. It's a new frontier. And there's a lot of information and misinformation on the internet about COVID-19 and 5G, just a lot of confusing information. And what we have to begin to understand is the importance of taking control over the information from the media that we allow into our mind, into our body. And we have to understand